Hi, everyone, and welcome to another data-driven podcast. And today's special guest is Carly Taylor. Hi, Carly.
Hey, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Carly is the senior manager for security strategy at Activision, and she's an expert in machine learning. And really, you're just a very well-known data and analytics influencer. So happy to be able to talk to you today, Carly.
Well, what a kind intro. Thank you.
You have an amazing background. Could you like to just let's just start with just how you got to where you are today? What was your path to being Carly Taylor at Activision?
I feel like this goes along with what we were just talking about. I can say I was a chemist and then yada, yada, yada. Not there. But a lot happened in that yada, yada, yada. So I started my career as a chemist. It's been a wild ride,
Wow.
when I graduated, actually after undergrad was when I started looking for lab jobs, trying to figure out, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? And I quickly realized that there were not many jobs, despite what I had been promised throughout my education. Surprise, surprise. And I started to realize, in order to even be competitive in a chemistry like in a chemistry job or a chemistry lab, I would need some sort of graduate degree. And at that point, I was already thinking, like, I don't know if this is going to be for me long term. And so I had an opportunity to do computational chemistry as part of my master's program. And I realized, okay, this is kind of going to be the perfect stepping stone for what I eventually want to do, which is kind of get out of chemistry and into tech.
Hmm.
And instead of going back to school for a comp sci degree and doing all of that all over again, I'm old enough that this was before like data science was a degree. Like you had to kind of
Right.
feel your own, like take the math
Yep.
classes,
Yep.
take all the comp sci classes. I decided to do this computational chemistry because it was kind of like enough of what I had already done with some new things that I'd be learning and try to see if that wouldn't be a good entry point. It was actually still really hard because nobody knew what a computational chemist was.
No,
So
I don't know what that is. Yeah.
right. So getting that first job was super difficult after I got my master's degree. I think it took me 8 months, almost a year of applying, getting rejected, feeling really bad about myself. I was walking dogs for months. It was actually not that bad. The dogs at least were fun. Yeah, I
So
got
what?
that
So
first
what?
job.
So
I
who
was like,
gave you, Carly? Who gave you that chance? Like who gave you the chance to get
it
started?
was a marketing analytics company,
Uh,
surprisingly. I didn't know anything about marketing. I
uh,
knew about analytics, but not pertaining to marketing. And so it was definitely a culture shock. I didn't have any like business clothes because I had always worked in labs, right? And then, so I was like, what do I do with myself? It was so awkward.
oh my gosh, that's hilarious. And that was your first job. Was it as a data scientist or
It was more
what
like
we?
a data analyst.
Okay.
So I think the title was like marketing science analyst or something really like
Okay.
long-winded, but it was basically data analysis. And the thing I didn't love about that job, but it was a really good entry point for me, was that it was almost all in Excel. And
Mhm.
so I had really wanted to start using like my Python skills. I had studied R at that point too. And I was
Mhm.
thinking like I could do a lot of this stuff in R. I could automate a lot of my workflows, right? Like I
Mhm.
was having the realization that a lot of people have when they're doing the same thing over and over, thinking like there has to be a better way to
Mhm.
not do this repetitive kind of like calculation work. And, it was in trying to discover if I could do that there. I had an opportunity to go to a startup and was able to kind of investigate that a little bit more, I think, than at the other company.
Sometimes it's like it's good to be lazy, right? Because if you're lazy, you don't like to do repetitive things, and so
Exactly.
you'll actually invest time into
Yes.
actually, taking away the work
Yes.
by automating it. So
Yes. I liked
it does
looking at it
pay.
that way. That's a
Yeah.
really good way to think about it.
Okay, so now you're in the gaming industry, and everybody, especially everybody coming up through tech, would love to work for the gaming industry or in the gaming industry. But tell us, like, what does it really look like, Carly, to work in gaming?
It's as fun as you would think, but it's a lot harder than you would think. And
Mm.
so it's kind of this dichotomy of the challenges we face are really big. There's a lot of, data at scale that we handle. And since, especially for someone with my personality, I'm very passionate about our game. I love our game. I played Call of Duty long before I ever worked at Activision. And so that passion translates into like not being good at setting boundaries and having a good work-life balance, right? And that's something that I personally struggle with because I could try to be on all the time. And there's certainly problems to solve all the time. And so, I think when you marry a passion with your day job, you just have to be cognizant that you don't let yourself burn out because it can ruin how much you loved, what you were passionate about before.
Completely.
And so this year for me is the year of trying to set better boundaries, take my actual PTO, which has been difficult for me to do in the past. And I think that, I'm not quite burned out yet, but I could see myself going down that path of, I love doing this so much. And this is not only my hobby, but my work, and just not really having anything outside of it.
So besides taking PTO, how do you define those boundaries? What's some of the techniques that you use?
Well, it's a work in progress, but I actually asked people on LinkedIn the other day about this because I was wondering what everyone else did, if especially working from home, which I love working from home. I don't think I'll ever go back to an office, but it's easy to not have like a boundary of like when I walk in the door, I'm home, right? Because my office is also in the room where I play video games. Like this is my battle station as well. And so, from what people were saying, it's something I definitely need to do is like either getting Slack off of your phone or silencing notifications at the end of the day. Not having email on your phone, which I'm like, okay, I think I might actually die. That's like my lifeline. So I don't know if I'm ready for that one yet, but setting like focus times on your phone, so that it'll silence everything. And then really just being, I think, mindful is probably the first step, like when you realize, oh, it's 8 p.m. and I'm trying to like open my laptop and do some work. Say like, no, not tonight. This can wait. But I'm still trying to learn how to figure that out. That's where I do it.
It's very true that because of Slack, I mean, you're kind of always on. I have Slack on my phone too. And, I just try not to look at my phone after when I'm up, but so that sometimes you can't help
then
it.
How are you going to scroll through social media? Like the dog videos on Instagram need my
attention. So just a little bit of a hint to you and the listeners. I really hate social media.
Well,
so here I am doing a podcast and promoting it on social media. It's like, I like it. It's really not. It's really something that doesn't come natural for me. That's something I don't like is social media.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
You seem like a natural at it. I mean, you're always having to be out here and be the face of things. So you could probably do a session on that.
Well, hey, I love to talk to people like yourself. But when it comes to posting, very unnatural for me.
Yeah.
Even though I worked at Clout, do you remember Clout and your Clout score? Do you remember that back in the day? Okay, well, so Clout with a K, we would score people based on how influential they were on social media. And you would have a Clout score. And so I worked at the company that produced the Clout score, which, of course, I had terrible Clout and I had to like...
Were they like, person with the least amount of Clout?
It was the guy, owning the big data that powers the algorithm that calculates your influence score, anyway. Okay, so anyway, that's enough about that. But in terms of like, people probably I don't realize this. I know my kids love Call of Duty, and I'm always watching them play it. I'm not fast enough, or I don't have enough dexterity to actually play. It looks really hard.
I've noticed the older I get, the worse I get.
Just helping. I stopped it. I think at Wii Sports is like the last time I think I played. But what's involved in making an online game work, Carly? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So this is a really good question. I'm going to do kind of like the TLDR high level because there's a lot that goes into making an online game work. I'd say first you have to pray to the online engineering gods that everything is going to go smooth. You have to make a sacrifice at the altar of networking. No, but all jokes aside, so for most online games nowadays, I'd say we've moved to a client server architecture wherein you have a server. It sends the game state, so it's the authority of what's happening in the game world. And then you have all of your what we call clients. So that's like your PS5 or your PC are connected to that server. The server is sending game state to every connected client. And the client, like your PS5, is just a mirror of the server state.
Yeah.
And then in return, the clients are sending the user inputs from what your character is doing back to the server. And that's another yada, 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 yada. There's a lot of like interpolation that goes along with this to make sure you don't feel that lag. The fact that you're mirroring a server time that's actually in the future from where you are, right? And there's a lot of like connectivity and back and forth and interpolation to make it feel like it's actually real time and not like a few milliseconds of lag in between. Because you also have, the time round trip it takes from your client to the server.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're at in the world can be super fast. I'm in LA, so it can just be like super quick if there's a bunch of people around me playing and we have a server close by. But let's say I'm somewhere rural, right? Like I'm playing with some people who might be 1,000 miles away from me, and the server might be at a data center 2,000 miles away from me. And so there's a lot that goes into trying to make that experience not feel like it's 2,000 miles away from you. It's a really, really hard problem.
It sounds like it's magic, and then you have to do that obviously at massive scale too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's a big challenge. So
Yes.
So how does machine learning sort of work its way into the gaming industry and what you do?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. A lot of what we just talked about, right? Like the clients sending game state to the server, right? At the end of the match, you also have all of that game state, all of the inputs from the clients, we call it telemetry, gets sent to our data lake because we want to be able to figure out, what happened in the match, if everything is like playing the way it should. Like, how do you investigate if a map has good playability, right? You need to be able to look at how people interacted with the world.
Right.
So all of that client telemetry and server telemetry gets sent downstream to our data lake, either during the match or post-match, depending on what kind of event that it is. And then once that's in the data lake and it's accessible, you can do all sorts of things. I will say that, you have a couple ingestion points for machine learning. You can do machine learning real time from those events that do get set in real time to the data lake. You can just, grab it before or as it's being written, depending on like how quick you need to do something. But you can also do like post-match analysis where you're grabbing, a match worth of data and looking at something. There's also things that people do that aren't in the game, right? Like we have a store. We have the ability for you to customize your weapons. So there's lots of opportunities for machine learning there to, figure out what kind of things are people wanting to play with? What's your play style? Are you like a sniper? Should we be showing you like, hey, here's a cool new sniper like scope that you can use on your gun, right? And so I'd say those are more of like the recommendation systems. There's also what happens before you play the game, right? Like we need to actually build the game world. So there's a really, like I'd say, burgeoning community of deep learning engineers who are trying to figure out how to better create content for games, for like the game world, right? Because you have tons of artists. Why would they spend their time like making a new wood grain for a desk, that no one's ever really going to look at when you can have some like a deep learning algorithm make the textures or make something interesting for a room or figure out how to arrange furniture in a room based on where the door is, right? Like that kind of stuff that's not, I wouldn't say like the best use of an artist's time that can just like you said, automate away the stuff that makes us feel lazy that we don't want to do all the time.
Right. Exactly.
And the last one I'll talk about was actually from a LinkedIn post I wrote this week, which is something that's really near and dear to my heart after we've launched DMZ, is how do you make in-game AI more human? And that's something I think about a lot because, I think we're all nerds here. We think about like, what does it mean to pass the Turing test? What does it mean to like look human? We see ChatGPT and we're like, where are these lines? They're getting blurred, right?
Yep.
And I'd say that for like in-game AI and bots, there's like a huge group of people working on either reinforcement learning or imitation learning to
Mhm.
try to make these things play more human-like, so that, if a bot does something stupid, it doesn't kind of take you out of the immersion of the game and you're like, oh, I just remembered this is a computer because it did, whatever the human would never do.
Right. Right. I mean, that's like, so it sounds like there's a lot of things. Obviously, there's a lot of things you could do with machine learning in terms of enhancing gameplay and understanding what users are doing. Probably monetization is really important,
Exactly,
I would
yeah.
imagine.
You
Um,
still have to
uh,
make money, right?
exactly. How much of it is like actually something that's done post haste or after the fact, offline, not offline, but in batch as opposed to something that's happening in real time? I mean, is it, you know what I'm saying, Carly?
I
Like,
do, yeah.
yeah.
So for us, I would say that the real-time machine learning is new, but we're doing it.
Mm,
The post batch was happening more often. And I say this after reading a bunch of blogs from different gaming companies. And I think that the consensus used to be that it was easier to batch exfil data from the servers, right? Because
mhm.
they're doing all this stuff, they're already maintaining game state. So, like, the pipeline to get the data off of the server, it just used to be that they were architected to do that after the game completed. And so
Right.
it would finish and they'd wrap everything up and then send that payload somewhere. So the switch to get your server to start sending events in real time, it's not, a crazy engineering challenge. It's something that Facebook and Google, like real time machine learning, has been done for a long time.
Mhm.
But I just think that the scale and the actual like considerations about where those models sit
Mhm.
is now being reinvestigated. At least we're investigating it heavily. And from other people I've talked to, it's on the horizon, but I wouldn't say it's like the norm.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, especially doing that at scale must be insanely difficult.
Yes.
Um, so that's a amazing Kafka queue. Yeah. So,
Yes,
okay.
God.
Carly, what advice would you give somebody who was interested maybe in getting into the gaming industry?
So I would say, specifically for people in data, because those are the people I talk to the most,
Mhm.
I always talk about the importance of having data projects. I think that, if you are new to something or you lack some serious experience and depth, the best way to show your talent is to have projects that you can speak to, something that you're passionate about, right? So when you're talking to a recruiter, you're like, I got this data and I did this. And that excitement is something that comes across
Comes
in
through.
interviews. Yeah. People
Yes.
love to see that you're passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend like actually grabbing some real game data if that's what you want to do. There's open data sets from PUBG on Kaggle, same thing with Dota. I think
Mhm.
there's some Call of Duty data sets on GitHub actually that you could,
Yeah.
Call of Duty World League, that you could grab and play with. And then just do some sort of project with it. If you're a data analyst, right, build a dashboard, do some data analytics, find some insights. If you're a data scientist, build some sort of predictor, right? I think the Kaggle data sets were actually machine learning predictor. Um, like the original challenge was asking for predictions to find who's going to win a game. And
Mhm.
so that's a perfect opportunity, right? You've got the question built in for you. It's easy to tie back to the business use case. Something else I say, like, as you're doing a project, think about, what would this do for the business? Like, am
Mhm.
I just building an algorithm for fun
Mhm.
because I think it's cool? That's awesome. And it's great when you're in school. But you need to always be tying it back to a real world use case, that's something that's going to help the business move forward. And a lot of those are, if they're already set up with a cool question that the business asked you, like they care about it for some reason. So that's an easy win for you.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I actually did put a demo data set together for AtScale for using
Oh,
Dota
cool. You
because,
did?
yeah, I did. It
That's
was
awesome.
amazing. It's like the Twitter fire hose, but for
Yeah,
gaming. I mean, it's like, it's an amazing asset. So yeah, that's great advice. Go out
that's
there and
cool.
consume real data and do
I would
something
love to
interesting
see
with it.
that demo. You should link it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, maybe I'll resurrect that
You
and
should.
refresh it a bit. It's been a while. Um, so just okay. So we talked a lot about gaming. There's a lot of stuff obviously going on and new technologies, and a lot of hyped or overhyped technologies, as we know. So let's just talk about the metaverse for a second. I want to get your opinion about whether you think that's real or hype, or and where do you think it's going, if anywhere?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. Like, I think that the hype comes from people overestimating kind of like how soon we're going to get there,
Mm-hmm.
or like how technically ready we are for some of these things that, I think like people are promising investors, right? Like we
Yeah.
hype up like, oh yeah, the metaverse is going to change everything. It's going to be this revolution. But it's not coming next year. I don't think, at least, this is all me speaking very personally about what I see in, the industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there is an opportunity here. And I worry that it has been co-opted by people that most of us maybe aren't primed to trust. I feel bad, but I'm calling Mark Zuckerberg out personally on
Yeah.
this one. I don't think that he's a beacon of what we would consider someone who's like a trustworthy person who we want to give all of our data to, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
just kind of the way that it is. He's going to have to just accept that.
Yep. I
Maybe
agree.
isn't even his fault, but like get a PR team, just like accept where this is going. Like no one wants to think that you're going to own the future of the internet, right? Because
Yep.
from what I see, what I love about the internet, and I think what a lot of people love, is that it's not owned by one company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can go to different companies' websites, but like aside from what people are alleging about Google, they're probably the closest to owning the internet that we've
Mm-hmm.
seen. And I think a lot of people resent that. So
Yep.
when we have these big players coming in and talking about like rebranding themselves as Meta, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that to me is a lot of the hype, and it does a lot
Mm-hmm.
of damage unnecessarily. Um,
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So let me ask you: do you have a VR headset? I mean, do you?
I actually don't, which is
You
crazy.
don't. I mean,
No.
to me, that's like that's all that needs to be said, right? It's like, because you think that the first killer app, well, I know there's another killer app that always comes first, but
Exactly.
gaming is second. Is always the killer app for a new technology. And how come we're not seeing more VR games, or am I not close enough to it, Carly?
I think that there's my idea of the metaverse is that it's all about concurrent experiences. So instead of me going to, like AtScale.com and looking at what you have going on, I could be somewhere in game or doing something in a world with other people, and I could run into you or run into an AtScale rep and see some things about it just in my day to day. Right. And, not like in a spammy advertisement way, but just in a, I'm interested in this. Let me go over to this part of the world. Let me see what's going on over here. And so I don't know that VR necessitates that. We already have a lot of like Call of Duty, right? Like we have these big world games with 150 people all experiencing something together. I'd say that that's like a fledgling metaverse, right? Like everyone is having some sort of concurrent experience. We've got the server authoritative state, right? That game state was what I would call the metaverse. Everyone's connected to it. The question comes like, how do we scale that? So I think VR is a piece of it. I don't know that I think it's a necessity. And my aversion to VR, just like very personally, I get super seasick.
Yeah. That's
Like I need
common.
Dramamine on boats. Like I don't know what it is. So for me, I've always been kind of like I haven't wanted to do those things immediately just because of that kind of vertigo feeling.
Yeah.
But if they could fix that, like I'd be super into it. But I also
No,
kind of don't like the idea of having like my ears and my face covered. Like I think it's a very vulnerable position to
And
be in.
yeah, and
I
it's
just think
like
about someone
bumping into
sneaking up on
furniture
me.
and stuff. It just seems very unnatural, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like your take on that. That online gaming really is creating the sort of same kind of shared experience that you sort of would think about in a metaverse. So, but we don't think of it that way because
Yeah.
it's sort of always been there. But
Yeah.
I like your take on that. I don't have a VR headset. My son does, but
Does he like
um,
it?
he doesn't use it that much. There's
Yeah.
maybe one game that he does when he does, and he's a big gamer. And but it's so there's only a one game that he actually is engaged with, and it's another first person shooter kind of game,
Okay,
So,
interesting.
but
I've heard Beat Saber is fun. I think it's like a techno, like
yes,
sword
yes,
game. I don't
yeah,
really know what it is,
yeah. That's I hear that's like yeah, that's but I don't know. Apple's going to come out with the headset supposedly this year, so
Oh,
stay tuned.
right.
Maybe they'll fix everything. I don't know.
I guess that makes sense because haven't the Samsung phones been like you can strap it to your face
Yeah,
to be kind of like a VR headset?
sounds very unnatural. That's not going to be mean. I'm telling you.
You're not gonna
Um,
be walking around like
yeah, no. So okay, what about Chat GPT? What do you think about that?
So it's okay. The first time I used ChatGPT, I work in ML and I was like, holy expletive. This is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
I was taken aback by it. And as someone who kind of like understands the state of the industry, I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any stretch of the word, but like, cursory overview, not blown away by things too often anymore. Completely floored. So in reflecting on that moment, I'm thinking, all right, I think the reality of the situation is that
Mhm,
probably Google, Microsoft have bigger and better foundation models than ChatGPT.
mhm,
My guess would be that in-house, they have some things that are even crazier, right?
mhm, mhm,
But what I think happened here, and I think was really smart from OpenAI, was that they beat them to market and made it free to use. And
mhm,
so they set the precedent for what people think of when they think of something that blew their mind recently, right? And I think we're all kind of like have some level of like technology fatigue.
mhm.
So like, for me, like an elder millennial, it's not easy to blow my mind with things anymore. Like I lived through texting becoming a thing and like the first iPhone, right? Like
Yeah,
so
me too.
for this to be the thing that blew our minds, that might not even be the best thing out there, I think still set them up in a way that like they've done a really good job of like becoming part of the zeitgeist and just being like what we think of when we think of crazy AI, right?
Yeah, you know what it means. Like, it's AI has always been something that you talk about in movies and the like, and of
Uh-huh.
course, us in our industry, we're using machine learning to do things, but to put it into a package that a consumer can actually use and be impressed with. I mean, I was blown away too.
Yeah.
To me, it was like it's almost like the internet moment for me,
Yeah.
where it was like, just yesterday I said, write me an 800-word article about the modern data stack, and
I
it
love
did it.
that.
And it was like, of course, it's
Was
not
it
very
good?
interesting. Well,
Okay.
it's you know what, it's a good
It's fine.
synopsis, and but
Okay.
but it did it, and it did it, in
That's crazy.
in about 3 minutes, and
Yeah.
that is insanely impressive.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe search. I think search and the way we think of search today, I think that's going
Yes.
to change,
I
right?
totally agree. Yep.
Um, and so if I was Google, it's like, you always say, Google has like what, 85% of the market share
Mhm.
for doing search, and how would they going to get disrupted? This is
Yes.
an example of eventually something comes along that is not going to beat them at their own game. It's just changing the game.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's what this could be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I wish it did. As I was using it, I was thinking, I wish this had links to sources. And then
Yeah.
it would be basically a search engine, right?
Yeah,
And it'd be an
absolutely.
amazing one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like lifted up Microsoft. That's probably, the big investment. That's probably where it's gonna go, Garly,
Yeah.
next. But yeah, lately I it's hard to get on it actually. It's
Yeah.
always busy. So
Yeah.
which means it's being obviously successful out there.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is amazing. I love your perspective on these new technologies. I love your perspective on gaming. So Carly, where do you think things are going from here? Let's just put on your future hat here. And what do you think is gonna blow us away? Or we'll look back 5 years from now and look back to this moment and think, wow, is it Chat GPT, or is it
I
something
think
else?
that's one of them for
Mhm,
sure. I think that, all the things that we've talked about, the ways that that will change just the way we interface with a search engine, right?
mhm,
Now think about all the ways you interface with a computer. Like when you want to, I'm on Linux, so I'm always trying to change things because all it wants to do is break itself. So let's say that I could like have some sort of ChatGPT interface that's like, please fix my NVIDIA drivers for the
Yeah.
4th time today, right? Like, and it could just go off and find the right driver, download it, like make sure everything's working, run a diagnostic, right? Because it understands what I'm looking for. It could go on a forum and say, oh, I can see here the latest release is broken. I need to roll back,
Mhm.
1 or 2 releases and do that by itself. Like that to me, I'm thinking even coding, right? Like I do a lot of the same boilerplate code. What if it came in? I think we already see this with what's it called with Microsoft Copilot.
Oh, yeah.
So like, your AI pair programmer, right? It's not going to
Mhm.
do everything for you or do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of like figuring out the best way to approach a problem. But if it did the boring stuff, importing packages, all that
Yeah.
stupid
All
stuff
this,
you don't want to
all the
do,
automation stuff. Yeah. The
how
dumb
much
stuff.
more, like,
Yeah.
how much more
I'm
could you get done? How much
with you.
more productive could you be? And so I think we're going to see a level of productivity in everything that we basically do that interacts with the computer that we're probably not prepared for yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's going to make us all really lazy. I'm going to be like, download a driver. What do I look like?
But yeah, no, because then we'll have more time to do other like higher valued stuff. Carly. That's
Exactly.
that's always the idea, right?
Hopefully. I'll have more time to scroll dog videos on Instagram. That's my ultimate goal.
There you go. Hey, Carly, you've been great, and this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for for taking the time today to talk with our listeners, and you have a great background and a great perspective on where things are going. So, so everybody follow Carly. You're a prolific writer, poster about the industry and data and machine learning. So check out Carly on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
All right.
Had
Have a
fun
great
today.
day.
Talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.